My name is Alice Lesnick. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm on the faculty at Bryn Mawr College. My official title is Chair and Term Professor of the Education Program and Associate Dean for Global Engagement. That's a great question. I would say I lean more towards communalism. I'm always looking for ways to build community, and one of the questions I live by is what can we do together that we can't do alone? I use that question to guide me in my teaching, in program development, in leadership. But that said, I think in many ways I was taught to be more individualistic, and those around me are often similarly conditioned, so there's often a struggle. Yeah, I would say family, and I think I was sharing with you a story that my mom literally used to sit me down, put her finger on my chest and say, "You must never depend on a man." So I got a message from that to be independent, which was valuable, but I also got a message that it would be a tragedy or perhaps very dangerous to be dependent. And so it cuts both ways. I'm grateful for the encouragement to make my own living, which I always have, to stand on my own 2 feet, but there was an implicit individualism. Similarly, at school, I would say the second one was school, where the message was, do as well as you can. You are here to go as far as you can. What your peers are doing is more or less unimportant compared to what you do for and as yourself. Yeah, great question. I mean, one thing, in my childhood, there was another influence which tilted towards communalism, and that's the summer camp I attended for many years. So I was part of this community in the summers. It's not totally unlike the one we're sharing now, where people really did live more family style, and relationships were basically the whole point of it. So I think that gave me some foundation in experience for communalism, but I also think that as a parent, I became so convinced, and it became so clear to me, that no parent can raise their child alone. You have to depend on the whole world to raise your child. You have to depend on the water they drink, the air they breathe. You become very vulnerable as a parent because you realize that you simply can't guarantee your child's safety or what happens to them. So building community is a way of protecting them. Yes, I was just talking with Mr. Smila about one such, and we were reflecting and also laughing about the differences. So we were reviewing a situation where someone from America expressed that when a person is late to a meeting, it can be seen as a sign of disrespect in America, and that the way we index time is closely tied to showing respect. Mr. Smiley was saying here that is not the case, that if you're late, it's likely because you needed to do something else, something took your attention at that time, and no one would take it as an affront if you're late. It might be an inconvenience, but it would not be an affront. And then he went on to say, we don't always let people know ahead of time if we're going to be late, just as we don't always let people know ahead of time if we're coming to visit them. He said, I can go without announcing myself and visit my friend or my family member. And it made me stop and think, how many people in my life do I just drop in on? Literally, with my body. We're at a point in America where people don't call each other on the phone without an appointment. So I've noticed that as just one anecdote of a much broader thing. I mean, as a scholar and somebody who's been reading and thinking with the tradition of Black studies and Black study, You know, when I read Robin D.G. Kelley or Joshua Myers talking about Black thought, and it's one way that people sometimes talk about it is with a metaphor of jazz, that you have to know your music so well to then be able to improvise. What's happening in the improvisation is always between people in a specific setting, leveraging individual skill, but for the communal art. And I find that really inspiring. And I think that it's a model for all kinds of inquiry, jazz being one, that the world sorely needs. Yes. Great question. Love these questions. So, to your first one, definitely. Every move I make as an educator has to do with learning in and as a community. So, the way I structure a class never is talking at people. It's always setting up experiences where students and I, often led, co-facilitated with other students, are building inquiries, exploring, testing ideas in small groups, in dialogue. Assessment is dialogic. Everything I do in my scholarship, too, aims to be dialogic and not monologuing. And in my work, too, with my team, our department is for each other. We have a group chat. We start our staff meetings with a check-in, which I start my classes too. How are you doing? What's going on with you? We celebrate and lift up our successes, and when we have struggles, we really encourage each other to bring them out so that we can hold them together. And I think I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of all of us in the way we do that. It is not pervasive where I teach. It's not always the norm, but we are so encouraged by how students take it up and by how it keeps us strong and also sane. In terms of the second question, I actually think there are a lot of similarities between Ghana, say, and the Philly metro area where I spend most of my time looking in classrooms. I think many teachers want to teach in a more experimental, holistic, student-centered, interactive way, but there are many pressures not to. Standardized testing, lack of time and money that are important. You know, it's easier to teach in a lecture-based format where the teacher knows the answers, deposits them into the mind of the students, and then sees how well they can spit them out. It's easier, and it's cheaper to do it that way. You can do mass production that way. So this factory model of education is visible in both places, as are many people working to change it. So I actually think there's a lot of possibility for collaboration across the ocean in that way.
All right, that concludes our interview. Thank you so much for your time.
My
Do you have
pleasure.
any last words? Anything you'd like to share?
No, I'm really looking forward to your project.